Good morning, everyone. I have the grateful task of receiving the architect Carmen Espegel, full professor at ETSAM PM. Such satisfaction does not only refer to the outstanding professional who now appears to open the second conference day, but also to the friend with whom we have been collaborating for some time. Carmen is part of a generation of architects who had the opportunity to associate critical reflection with professional practice. Her intellectual and professional training took place in the expansion of the influence of architecture and urbanism in the social and economic context of the 80s and 90s, which placed Spain at the forefront of production in the period. Her solid academic background can be recognized in the projects in which she took part. In a word, we could say that her architectural research is centered on the activation of possible urbanities through architectural and urban projects, and it's carried out through subtle strategies that were not captured by the urban specularity that marked a great part of recent architectural production. Our collaboration goes back in time to the research group Givico and the production of CHC booklets, whose methodology has been adapted to the Brazilian context. Several booklets have already been made regarding the Brazilian housing experience, and others are still being developed with our students. Since that first partnership, we have continued to work together in the context of our thematic research project. Among the important topics of her activity, I highlight the theme of her lecture today, women's work in architecture. Carmen, herself an outstanding expression of this condition, has dedicated herself to rewrite the female participation in this practice, which is mistakenly considered as a male construction. She published a reference book for feminist studies and the history of architecture, Women Architects in the Modern Movement. So it's with joy that I give the screen, to Professor Carmen, so that she gives us one more opportunity to reflect on fundamental themes of our professional and academic activity. Welcome, Carmen, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis, for this nice introduction. And I would like also to thank the directors of this critical. Well, first because they invited me, and I appreciate very much that. Silvia Colmenares from Spain and Leandro Medrano from Brazil, but also because they were able to prepare this Congress and to do this Congress with this complicated situation. No limits. I will share the screen. Just a second. Okay. No limits. No limits is the name I decided to give to this lecture because these women architects, they had no limits to try to find their way to work on architecture on a period which it was not really easy. I think that this image, this photograph with Charlotte Perriand naked from the waist up with the underwear in her hands, very close to fly over the French Alps, resume perfectly the achievements for that women architect got in their change of status in the 20th century. Let me see how it works. Okay. But we knew a little bit about architecture. No? I try in this book to find architecture since the beginning of history where women had something in common with this field. But I realized, okay, we are the first house, the first architecture, the first shelter, the first refuge. And but it seems that well, at the end of the past century, 20th century, the beginning of the 21st, an exuberant repertoire of exhibitions, books, articles, and cultural events, as this one, related to women and gender and architecture, seems to multiply. It happens as if we had not existed as a social being till 19th century, when our hierarchical and functional differentiation began to be questioned. Surely, because, well, historians, encyclopedists, academics, and in general the guardians of the culture have traditionally been men. And the episodes of and the works of these women, creators, artists, warriors, adventurers, politicians, or scientists have been very rarely recorded in history. Thanks to the positive increase in the female presence in society, the situation begins to get balance, but even at the cost of a high level of retrograde sexism. We as researchers try to rescue the work of our ancestors from the shadows of the history. I love this painting. In 1405, Christine de Pizan wrote a book entitled Cité des Dames, City of Ladies. In that book, she conceived, she was the first French professional writer, and she conceived a city in which independent women lived protected from the insults and the calumnies of men. She passionately defended the rights and the honesty of women, as well as her capacity for artistic work such as painting, writing, even architecture. Here, she is placing the first stone of this Cité des Dames, this wall that protects us from the calumnies with a reason. And but it's not until the positivism, Comte, Hume, and Marx, when Westerners begin to question the prevailing order. The unequal position between men and women is perfectly explained in this painting by Johann Sofani from 1771. Represents the members of the British Royal Academy. Among those members, there were 2 women. You cannot find them. I'm sure you don't see them because they were not among them. They were transformed into subjects, into objects. They were hanging on the wall in these 2 busts that you have on the right of the painting, because it was not, it was forbidden for them to be inside this room where some models, nude, naked, were there. So in this sense, they were transformed from producers of art, they were painters, to objects of art, mere representations, and explain perfectly the cultural and social concept of the female artists throughout the history of art. At the end of the First World War, the prevailing status collapsed, and it was necessary for them, for the society to create a new one, especially from a moral point of view. From this photograph with Lady Ottilie Morel as in her role, she was a very important patron of the arts, but she represents clearly this image of the women fragile with some headache, the typical 19th century image. And from this picture to this other one, there were only 20 years of distance. So Josephine Baker was a symbol for the modernity. Even a lot of architects were absolutely got in love with her body, but also with her way of acting and manifesting. The bourgeois ethics had led to such a war horror that the cause should be sought in the erroneous principles of which it was based. Most of the artists dedicated themselves to redefine the concepts of good and evil, and reorganizing the dislocated universe that they had to live. For instance, in this case, Aurora Dupin had to sign her writings as George Sand, because it was impossible for her to be a writer on that time. And she has to dress as a man to be able to express herself and to do what she wanted to do on that time. In this case, in this period and in the interwar period, mental schemes always are connected with the territorial schemes and also with spatial schemes. The artists wanted to live in coherence with the aesthetical revolutions they were provoking. And many, well, we can see here these the relations, many different relationships, as Gertrude Stein and Elisabeth Toklas and others took this revolution to the extreme in the personal and the social, trying to avoid as much as possible, even in the arrangement of their houses, socio-moral norms stipulated. There is a very nice book by Elisabeth Toklas, Gertrude Stein, titled The Portrait of Elisabeth Toklas, where she explained how was Paris on that moment, how Picasso went to her house to eat some garbanzos pigs, green pigs or something like that, no? And because I think it was a complete different society, and they try to explain that in this book. Virginia Woolf and the book A Room of One's Own, she only asked for a place for us. She asked us to please write crazily. You have to write whatever you wanted. It doesn't matter if it is important or if it is insignificant, but you have to write. Ladies have to express themselves and to express how are their lives, so through the writing, through the books. And but she also was the I mean, there was a group, the Bloomsbury group, that was around her, and they also live in a completely different family concept and models, without marital ties, and sometimes with celibacy, free union, couples without these marital relationships, single parent families. So they were, in this moment, they were trying to test new family models that, of course, in the 70s and in the 80s and nowadays are absolutely common, no? And also these changing implied a transformation of the domestic sphere and the domestic space. Simone de Beauvoir, another seminal book for feminism, no? The Second Sex, written in 1949, she examines the history, the myths, the biology, and the life experience of a woman, and I think paints a clear picture of why women were subjugated to men and how womankind should respond. Personal life in this period unfolds, and within the private sphere of the family, an autonomous, intimate existing is built. Remember, in the 19th century, family prevailed over the individual. But in the 20th century, this position changed, and was the individual who tried to have a private life and will no longer be confused with the family life. Here we see one of the first collective nurseries in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union revolution decided to kill the family, to deny the family, the traditional bourgeois family, avoiding women to work at home. Because they need their hands. They need their hands to go to the fields and to work as a workers. And this is one of these samples that they try to do to avoid, to be free, for the women to be free and not to be attached to the interior of the house and the household. The first contemporary feminist analysis focus on the works of women artists and demonstrating that the dualities of men and women, culture and nature, rationality and intuition were applied in history associated with femininity to measure the great art. But qualities as decorative, precious, sentimental, intimate, effeminate, or even naturalistic were pejorative characteristics associated with femininity to measure this great art. Although women may have possessed intellectual and creative faculties, but society and family determine their role and define what they could do. In this case, Camille Claudel, and sculpture, of course, also work with Auguste Rodin, but also she was a very important sculptor. Her family decided to place it in a mental institution because it was too much for that moment. As a consequence of cultural selection that was not natural, women did not have access to male professions for a long time. Thanks to the struggles led by feminist movements, allow the women to enter into the universities, even if this was a private initiative in that time. But I ask you to take a look on these two drawings that represents two different types of houses. One linked with the patrilineal type and another with the matrilineal. And I would like you to think a little bit and to decide which one decide which one is that. I'm sure most of you will be confused. I made this exercise with my students for a long time, and most of them were confused. Why? Because the organic, the curved, the soft architecture that is in the upper part, it does not is not the representation of the matrilineal. It's just the reverse. It's the patrilineal type. The matrilineal type, as an opposite, is close, fixed. It's not. It's transformable, but not so much. But the patriarchal scheme is we could say nowadays much more contemporary in the sense of is a changeable settlement that can be grow and increase and decrease even depending on the needs of the moment. But it's interesting this how the kinship relations has expressed their importance in shaping real structures. Well, I just would like to present in this slide the first 25 years of the 20th century, because it was a tumultuous quarter of a century. If we start here, we have Sigmund Freud, dream interpretation, and then the Queen Victoria's death, then the train of the Lumiere brothers, that people get in panic because in the room, because they thought that the real train was going to run them over. But also we have the Curies, Pierre and Marie Curie, with the discovery of the spontaneous radioactivity, 1903. Arnold Schoenberg, dodecaphonist, 1903. We passed through the argon gas, and so on, and the Koch bacillus Koch, the cause of the tuberculosis, discovered in 1905, but of course Brancusi, who went walking from Bucharest, from his Romanian city to Paris to be the sculptor he was. And the Faubist. The Faubist exhibition in 1907 with Madame Matisse and the Green Line. Emil I already Pankhurst. But the First World War, in 1914, the Great War and the Mexican Revolution, but also Kafka with the Metamorphosis and the Russian Revolution in 1917. We see here Rosa Luxemburgo, who was killed and murdered in 1919 in Berlin. But if we pass, we see Wittgenstein, the Ulysses of James Joyce, the tube television, the first tube television in 1923, the death of Lenin's death, and the Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf in 1925 was published. Adolf Hitler, and then we finish with Fritz Lang and Metropolis. So as a kind of a background of what happened in that time, I think these images are very clear. Well, it can be affirmed that women architects in the heroic period of architecture, of modern architecture, proposed the habitability of the cold and abstract modern architecture, of the new objectivity. The commitment of most of this architecture made by women in the very bosom of the objectivity was to make the barrel of Diogenes habitable, which for Le Corbusier was a pinnacle of Saligkeit, but also a peak of architecture. Women, as all of these and others, I mean, this active evolution of women as professionals is perhaps, well, the most important parameter of the modernity of the last century. Women has been constrained to craftsmanship, domesticity, and short to the inner, to the interior. And the passage from women as an object of industry to women as a subject of it has been an exponent of this modernity. Of course, all of them are close to male colleagues that eclipse a little bit their works. Two exceptional German women of the First World War are to be named here: Emil Binkelman and Elisabeth von Tibbleskis. The first one is maybe the first German architect to work in the free profession before the Great War, and the second was able to work in a civil service. In 1923, he left the Potsdam provincial government. We know that after the Art Nouveau women comes the Art Nouveau, the Art Deco women, and then the Bauhaus, the women of the Bauhaus. They play an important role in the history of design. Most of these women arrives to architecture through the edges, through the borders of the architecture, from interior design, from design of fabrics, textile, clothes. Sometimes they were designers of furniture or rugs or whatever. They found whatever place, whatever fissure they could find to enter into this field, they use it. So it's not very easy to see if they were or not architects in a sense, but they were working in those fields that nowadays we say to our students that are the expanding of our subject, and which are quite common to work with. No? For instance, theater or a set of theaters or wherever. Very few women in Bauhaus school devoted their attention to architecture. Well, first of all, because they closed them a little bit in the fabrics workshop, and only 3 or 4 arrived to be architect. But also because Gropius was worried about having a female school, so they limited a little bit the entrances of these women, even if we saw a lot of women in all these pictures in La Bauhaus, but they were working as designers, as photographers, as furniture design, whatever. I'm sure you remember Marianne Brand and that metal objects, fantastic objects, Sophie Toverarp, Oti Berger, Annie Alves, but only Stoltz, Gertrude Stoltz, arrived to the position of a master, of a professor in Bauhaus, being before a student for 6 years. I have to mention that also Lily Reich arrived, was teaching in the Bauhaus, but only for 1 year before the closing of the school. The participation of women in the new society, the new Soviet society, was reflected in a high number of female students who followed courses in art, architecture, and engineering in the 20s. But even if they have, in the beginning of the century, totally reorganized throughout the country the artistic education, Butema's Institute is when the really combination of these 3 fields, architecture, production, wood, metal, textiles, ceramics, etc., polygraphy, and art are combined. And the importance of this school, I mean, is really remarkable. And I would like to, among the students, I would like to underline the work of Smolenskaya, that is still contemporary, with these oblique masses for the main room of the Congress Palace of the USSR in 1928. It's really nice to see how all these artists, but I said Malevich, the great Malevich, Tatlin, Lissinsky, Alexander Vesny, but also the female, the Popova, Stepanova, Alexandra Esther, etc., were so involved in producing everything, because they thought that art was a whole. It has a holistic concept, and they were practicing, I don't know, painting, but at the same time architecture, graphic, interior, or theoretical design, and even they were designing clothes for sportsmen. Popova produced various sets of theater, but this one with Alexander Vesnin produced this Koninskoe Festival set for Meyer Hall in Moscow. And also not only architects, but engineers, no? Such as Tatiana Makarova, who worked in the building industry and was responsible of these formal studies of hyperbolic paraboloids for new suspended roofs. It's nice to find, and difficult to find all these women through the books, because history, most of the times, well, the books, if they are in English, it's not very easy to differentiate if they were women or men, but also in some of the books they are written there, but nobody told us, nobody told that they were they were working in that such a difficult moment. If we go to the Eastern Europe, we also find great architects as Hanna Kutselova-Zawecka, that work in this the famous Bauhaus district, and she built these two rational and pure and fantastic villas, Ballinger and Zug, in the 30s. But the sinister period of afterwar would destroy such encouraging beginnings. Grete Sud-Zelichowski, who had been in Moscow in the 30s with Ernst May, was also part of the member of the resistance in Vienna in 1933. Was sentenced to 15 years in prison, since exceptionally she escaped. But Friedel Dicker died in Auschwitz, and all the students of La Bauhaus died in Auschwitz. Charlotte Perriand in 1914, because of the German invasion of France, decided to flee to Japan. And she continued her investigations, and then she had to move to Indonesia when the Japanese decided to enter into the Second World War. But also the great Lina Bobardi, an Italian architect that decided to move and to emigrate to Brazil because in 1946, because she was really disappointed after the Second World War. She thought that the same dogs with different colors were in the power, no? The Christian Democracy Party, and that return of the old ghost pre-war. She was really worried on that, and she decided to move and to emigrate to Brazil, where she developed an excellent architecture that is at the height of the best productions of the 20th century. Now she was able to design the MASP, design this enormous structure, of course, with the help of a very high quality Brazilian architects, engineers. And at the same time, she was thinking how to present these paintings in the first museum of the country, and of Sao Paulo, and how to present it in a way that people could understand and could learn from painting without taking into account the name of the artist. So she designed this marvelous space with all these paintings floating in the air, as a cloud, in a very surrealistic image that I think is one of the best documents of modern architecture in the world. Now I'm gonna pass through these four female architects that form an important part of the most radical plethora of the 20th century architecture. Perhaps a common feature of the four heroines is the intimate relationship that existed between their work and their lives. Eileen Gray, Lily Reich, Charlotte Perriand, and Grete Sud-Zelichowski and Charlotte Perriand. I will present the work they developed. Eileen Gray, I resume her work as the architecture for life improvement. She was Irish, Anglo-Irish, came from a family, from an aristocratic family. She had money every month without asking for it. So she had no need to work, but she needed to work because she had more talents and she needed to develop those talents. I remark this photograph is when she moved to Paris in 1900, and she developed a career as a designer, interior designer, and she arrived to be the queen of the Art Deco. From 1900 till 1926, she moved from being the best interior design in Art Deco to one of the best architects of modern movement. But this work resume very clearly they position in front of architecture or in front of every artistic work. And is this a combination of really opposite situation as the figurativism or in the abstraction that we see here in this lacquer screen. In both, these are the both sides of the same coin, the same element. Instead of getting something really like a mess, you know, eclectic, she got a compact element, a compact object, absolutely clear and unique. This she also introduced new materials. I mean, the research was in her work every second. She couldn't repeat the same table or the same object or the same architecture. She wanted to advance, to go in forward, and the idea was to introduce research in her work. In this case, well, new materials, new techniques, new colors from the typical and the traditional work of a lacquer. Maybe this is also one of the seminal pieces for her work that influenced a lot the rest of the rest of the architecture she produced. That was not very much. Monte Carlo, Boudoir, Monte Carlo. Boudoir, why? Because, well, I love to express that this is one of the few pieces in architecture expressed, designed for women to pass those awful days in the month, every month, and to be separated from the rest of the family and the society. But it was also the starting of our readings, the women as the most important reading everywhere. And it's a combination. In this case, in Boudoir, Monte Carlo is a combination of one in one space, in one common space, how to introduce different uses through the furniture. You see on the right to make up, the place for making up, the divan, I think it's divan in English, or divan, I am not sure, which is absolutely different to the bed, because the bed is just for one use, for one function, but divan or divan is a furniture that can assume different roles, as a place for relax, as a place for resting, as a place for reading. So it's very interesting. So this idea of divan instead of bed. Here we also see her preoccupations, her worries about how to enter in a place, how to cover the interior uses, how to produce a little bit of mystery always. Well, if we pass through, this is a change. The importance change in her career comes with Jan Badovici, an architect who, a Romanian architect who studied in Paris, and who asked her to produce a modern architecture in the south of France. We will see now. But remember the old Eileen Gray in 900, and this one with 50 years old, a little bit older than him, with this new style, completely modern, androgyne, with the cut hair, the typical French cut hair, and so on. They both produce this house, Maison en bord de mer, who is a combination of for the different architectures. As I said before, he tried to combine all of these, but to get a fantastic unicity object. And she learned about vernacular architecture, but also about how the English way of living in these cottages. The Italian villa is also present, and the modern house. In this, yes, this house is not modern, absolutely, how can I say, it's a very eclectic in relation with modern architecture. But he entered to the Greek architecture without any doubt. And it's a house that knows perfectly the hot weather of the Mediterranean, how to live outside, how to live inside, how is the connection between one and the other. For instance, in this space is one space that covers behind this wall a clean lines, a kind of a little toilet with a shower. Here we have the reading room, here the music room on the right, and the famous divan or divan as it is. This combination was extremely sophisticated. I think she was very sophisticated and very subtle, and that is reflected in her architecture. The house was very abstract, so much that she has to add some rótulos, signs all over the house to explain the functions, and even to give you the opportunity to add new functions to that house. Choses légères, light things. And she designed furniture. Of course, this table, the 1827 table, is very famous every day in every television set. We see it nowadays, but it was designed to have the breakfast in the bed, and with this asymmetrical structure. But she, all the furniture she produced was in the really line of the most comfortable furniture of England, no? English comfort furniture. Well, the house has these two faces. The faces of the summertime completely covered with this reinvention of the louvers, the typical traditional louvers of Nice, and the canvas that protected from the sun, and the other vision, the other face, which was the face of wintertime. But the subtlety was so big. I love this screen, this mirror, excuse me. This mirror is called a satellite. And it was used to shave, as in her words, to shave the back of the neck, the nape. So refined and subtle. But the patent, for instance, on how to introduce this connection between inside and outside, Badovici patent, this window, which is a folding screen windows that disappear completely as they close and connect the terrace with the main room. Even the terrace was with this furnished with this navy blue rug and the transept chair. But also Le Corbusier painted during 1938 and 1939 this house with, he said, 9 paintings, but as far as I know, only 7 have been controlled. And thanks of that paintings, the villa is still alive. But also Le Corbusier trying to, how can I say, not to be very clear with the authorship of this villa. Eileen, close to 90 years old, is sitting in this extraordinary modern architecture and even contemporary chair, excuse me, the terrace folding chair. This lady, this old lady, my grandmother, designed in 1932 this chair. Now, Lily Reich. Lily Reich, I resume her work through the idea of the spirit of materials. I think she influenced the architecture. We will see the architecture of others through this knowledge and this fine definition of the materials and fine treatment of the materials. She was the first woman on the board of directors of the Deutschen Werkbund, and she was the responsible of controlling the quality of this house of the workroom in Frankfurt am Main, the windows, the shop windows. Why? Because German fashion was fighting. On that time, they were trying to get the level of the English and the French fashion. These institutions, the workroom and all, they decided to introduce quality. In one way was this idea, no, the quality of the products through design. And she was really a hard work and a very well known on before starting her career with Mies van der Rohe. And she worked a lot in exhibitions, in designing exhibitions. Here we have From Fiber to Fabric in 1926, that the first time she didn't show us the final product, but she wanted to get involved in the processes, which I think it was really radical on that time. And in after this exhibition, she started one relation. She associated with Mies van der Rohe from 1926 to 1933, more or less a little bit later on this picture, this photograph, which also was very important for her career. In both of them were asked to be involved in this exhibition in the housing in Stuttgart in 1927, and there were several halls and several places for the exhibitions, also with the famous Stuttgart colony led by Mies van der Rohe. And here in this exhibition, in several spots, in one of them is German lineal section. She wanted to sell the product through their exhibitions. In this case, also how the base of that product can be or has to be explained. No? She was worried about the material, to express the qualities of the material through these different bases and these different ways of explaining. But the most important, I think, one of the peak of her career was the Belvedere Coffee in 1927. All this also was done with Mies van der Rohe. In this case, the different tissues uses as the fabrics, velvet in colors. I'm sorry, I forgot the colors, but it's around the velvet in black, yellow, lemon yellow, and the silk with these curved and flat surfaces, with the materiality, with the different materiality and shadows of these elements, are really one of the nicest interiors of modern movement that influence a lot the career of and the development of the concepts of Mies van der Rohe, because in those previous exhibitions they were testing what happened with this space, continuous space, internal continuous space, and how the clothes and the fabrics could separate and control, and even the furniture also can accentuate the different use of that places. In the German pavilion, we have to thank Christian Lange and Beatriz Colomina that the authorship was shared between Mies van der Rohe and Lily Reich, and is already proof, but they had to do it through documentary, biographical, stylistic, and even forensic evidences. They had to use all this research to be to express that the authorship was shared, was not only by Mies van der Rohe. But Barcelona had another enormous amounts of, I think, 25 stands that were designed, and Lily Reich was really important. As a management, And well, in this case, I love this stand with these white walls and the black typography, but the repetition. No? In this case, she decided that the container, the bottle, was the most important part of the to show to the people. No, and she produced these two abstract lines. With the repetition, not the beauty, get it through repetition of one element, the bottle of the beer, the bottle of beer, and well, it's fantastic. But in Tugendhat House, that we know, of course, is by Mies van der Rohe. But how can you imagine to live in this house with this continuous interior space without this light? Party walls, these light curtains that complete and control the sound and the light of the interior. In the exhibition of our time in 1931, she well, they were producing several stands also. The fabric display, the wooden section, the glass display, the apartment for a single person, and so on. And here again, she make the basis of the processes that they would have from the tree to the laminated panel. Also is very beauty, but and she did some architecture as this house. This house is connected with the Mies van der Rohe house, and also the Lockhart brothers built another villa, and they were connected by what I call the love wall, both of them. In this case, even we see different furniture for the men or the female and the male room, done by Mies and done by Lili Reich. And well, the house is a very strange, in a sense, way of dividing the volume with the male and the female bedrooms connected by the bathroom. It was very typical for high level class families. And this idea of cutting into two the longest piece with the wet area, the kitchen, the toilets, and so on in this area, and the novel area to the other side. They were also working, and she was working on the definition of these kitchens and in this apartment of a single person. But these kind of little apartments were already a big discussion in Europe. We can find these models in Charlotte Berrien, but also the Soviets, the Russian architects were also working on that. And in case, well, thanks to these researchers, as I said, Christian Lange and Beatriz Colomina, well, we could found that in the catalog of the metallic furniture of 1931, Bamberg, we can differentiate and see which one is from Mies van der Rohe and which one is from Lili Reich. And I would like to finish with this image, this exhibition of, well, this presentation and introduction of Lili Reich with the exhibition German People, German Work. This is one of the last projects they did. And in this case, imagine now how she try to sell the idea of the powerful of the glass industry, the German glass industry, because even they knew how to curve the glass. And so she plays for 12 semi-cylinders of glass, curved glass, without anything, just a minimum control of the stability with these L profiles, really, really small, in chrome, and also a very almost unseen handrail in chrome, not to go against these marvelous reflections. She just took the last book from the States to Germany when Mies decided in 1938 he moved to Chicago, to give lectures in the Armory Institute of Technology, and Lily Reich went there 1 year later in 1939, and she took that Bremen transatlantic to come back when she discovered to come back to Germany when she discovered Mies was with another women and didn't want to continue the war with them. But don't forget them, don't forget it. They were associated, and even she kept the famous archive of Mies van der Rohe that is nowadays in the MoMA. Is thanks because Lily Reich kept it and gave it to one of the students of Bauhaus, who I don't know, I think he placed it in Poland or in the outer areas of Germany. Thanks of that, well, she came back and she died quite young. Most of these architects were lived a lot of years, no? 103 years. Grete Zutz-Celichowski. I call her work the splendor of an ethical compromise, because well, she she studied architecture. She was architect. She studied architecture in the university, and also she worked with different architects as Adolf Loos, etc. But the main point of her career is when she entered to work with Ernst May in Frankfurt am Main, in the offices of Frankfurt am Main. Frankfurt am Main built 16,000 houses, social houses, in 5 years. It was a really a very pragmatic project and a very interesting project. Thanks to these three men and a group that I will show you later. Ludwig Landmann, the mayor, the politicians, then Bruno Asch, the councillor finance, so the money, and the architect Ernst May. The group was formed by several architects, designers, furniture designers, and among them were Grete Zutz-Celichowski. Frankfurt wanted to be transformed into a city of fairs, to double almost the population. So the idea of Ernst May was to produce these autonomous dots, these autonomous settlements that were connected that were separated from the old city with a green belt, and that well, they were able, as I said, to build an enormous amount of social houses in a very, very short period. Sun, the motto was sun, air, and light. And all the houses have, in this tradition of the German architecture, had a part of an external place, of an external area inside the house. So in this case, the terrace. In the lower houses, they were connected with the garden, the vegetable garden, and in the medium levels, they have this terrace or the veranda. So the houses really were small. We are talking about 30 and 45 square meters, but they have these extensions, this natural extension. Thanks of the standardization of the building elements, as we see here, and the normalization of the furniture and the prefabrication of the construction, it was able to produce such a big, huge quantity of houses. In this case, it's very nice because this space, which is a really a small space, connected with this another one, is during the day I would say the living room, and during the night is the bedroom for the parents. This is another important concept. These three concepts to get this speed to build and this qualification to build with the prefabrication elements in concrete. And this was the third part. the definition of the kitchen as one more furniture that was given to the users, and it was included in the rent. That was the first time that kitchen was defined as something really industrialized, to be able to be industrialized. At the same time, to reduce their dimensions so much, and to reduce also the expensive of this new furniture because of the quantity. So well, she defined, she knew perfectly the work of the Americans, Christine Frederick, Lillian Gilbreth, all the work that they have done. And through these female associations, she got all this information, and she redefined again this kitchen that separated, of course, the line for production and the line or for heating and so on, for cooking exactly, and the line of the preparation of the food, the two different circuits. So it's also the first time that the country has the same height. Is the mother of our kitchens in the world. Also, the light comes and moves and slides to get the better illumination in the place you were working. But she also worked in different schools, in cooking schools and schools for children. She was always worried to work and to produce architecture for the weakest people. She moved to Russia when the Nazis arrived to the power, and they moved to Russia in the 30s with Erzmey group. And she lived until 103 years old, and she was always working in. She was a very well-known communist, and she was working in these orbit countries of the Soviet Union. Charlotte Perriand is the last one. In this case, well, the first. Charlotte asked Le Corbusier to work with him, and he answered, unfortunately, in this atelier workshop, we do not embroider cushions. Well, but she was not stupid at all. And whenever he saw, he was not stupid, and whenever he saw this Bar sur le Toit in the Autumn Salon in Paris, Le Corbusier decided to call again Charlotte to work in his studio, and what it was defined interior design and accessories, so l'équipement intérieur. With this chrome, because he was fascinated with this chrome furniture, and this is why he decided to go. But also, we have to say that Le Corbusier had already defined his theory of furniture in Précisions and in Architecture, in l'Almanach d'Architecture Moderne. We can see how he explains the good idea of the cassiers. The cassiers is the locks, metallics, juxtaposed, superimposed, or built in. The idea was to cancel out, to reject the old way of furniture inside our houses, and to incorporate the architecture and the furniture in the same layer. So you cannot differentiate between the window and the furniture and the architecture. So the cassiers was determined already as an idea, but and even it was defined a little bit as a furniture. But here we have still in this, we are in 1925. Here we have in this decorative l'Esprit Nouveau Pavilion. Charlot is not there. It's not in the Rue de Sèvres. Still, then we have the tonnette chairs, these old-fashioned sofas, but some modern furniture. But even the paintings, which are not bad at all, but they were like glue to the new architecture. There was not a connection. But if we pass through this, we see when Charlotte Perriand entered into the Rue de Sèvres office. We see completely linked the interior design and the architecture. So the architecture of Le Corbusier, the interior design that Le Corbusier was looking for, he got it thanks to this work with Charlotte Perriand. We even have not to forget that Charlotte Perriand, Le Corbusier, and Pierre Jeanneret, excuse me, also signed the furniture. Why? Because Charlotte already in 1928 no, before 1925, excuse me, already have designed this pivoting chair in one of it was exposed even in an exhibition in the Salon de Tombe. So she gave that design and connected with the rest of the designs that the three of them did it. And it is in the same, what we call, or what we know, the famous furniture of Le Corbusier is not that. Pierre Jeanneret and Charlotte Perriand is there. We also here in Ville-la-Roche see one and the other with and without Charlotte Perriand. And maybe one of the pieces I love, one of the nicest architecture I love is this one I will present you. While Le Corbusier was in 1929 giving some lectures in South America, here we see Tonnet, the director, Charlotte and Pierre Jeanneret, and is this, the famous interior equipment in 1929. Of course, very is a very modern, and also is full of industrialization and new materials, no? Glass on the floor, the chairs with these I'm trying to find the bearings, rodamientos, and I don't know, the shock absorbers. I was trying to find the famous sofa with shock absorbers in the back part of the seat, but the glass slab over sandbed, the opalescent glass suspended ceiling, and these bearings that could let you to move the bed from one side to another. This is really fantastic and modern and open, with the shower in the middle and the bathtub. In the 40s, in 1940, she moved to Japan because the Ministry of Commerce and Industry asked her to be a technical counselor. But she worked for with a lot of architects, also with Jean Prouvé, with Lucio Costa, with Niemeyer, Candilis, Josink and Goods. And in the 50s, she worked with Le Corbusier 10 years, in 37. And in the 50s, she was, Le Corbusier asked her again to design the prototype Marseille kitchen. You see on the left, the original, and on the right, the one who finally was built with these sliding doors. So also so contemporary. And the final part is the developing of the prefabrication and standardization and the working on the minimum cell industrialization for these, for some of these projects that she did in the Alps. In this case, this was just a model of Emil. It was unbuilt, but it was done with Candilis, Josik and Goods, and Jean Prouvé. She worked with Jean Prouvé a lot of times. They were very close friends. And finally, what they built was Les Arcs, the three resorts, 116 in the 600, 1800 and 2000. And the idea was to complete in summer times to build an enormous amount of apartments, to 15,000 during these years, the 1967 and the 1982. Through what? Through a method that could lead them to go very fast in summertime. And the method was to build these containers or these keeps in equipment in a fabric of boats. Is done with resin. And we have the three cells, the cells for the toilet, the cells for the bathroom, and the cell for the kitchen, that led them to pre-equip, what they call pre-equip. And they have all these water facilities and electrical facilities outside. And it is really a very nice place. I remember I'm a skier, and I was there. I knew it was different, but I didn't know why, because I was not studying architecture at that time. But anyway, it was a different way of understanding the space, the quality of interior space, and this knowledge of compactness, with a minimal cell. She also worked in her own house in Merivelle, in the middle of the slopes. And finally, I just would like to finish with this marvelous work, the Tea Pavilion for the UNESCO headquarters she produced in Paris. Looking now toward what certain women of the past achieve is not simple retrograde nostalgia, nor radical protest feminism, but a true historical need to search for other models that serve to grant greater dignity to any human being. Thank you very much.